Imagine being born into a world of glittering palaces, silk gowns, and gold-laced carriages, where every move you made was watched, every word rehearsed, and your future already signed away. But for Marie Antoinette, daughter of the Empress of Austria, this was not a fairy tale. It was a gilded cage. At just 14, she was torn from her homeland, stripped of her identity, and sent across Europe to become the Queen of France. What awaited her wasn't the romance of royal life, but a slow, unraveling nightmare of gossip, betrayal, and blood-soaked revolution. And if you think the guillotine was the most brutal part of her story, think again. If you're drawn to the darker truths of history, stories that reveal how power corrupts and how people are destroyed by the very crowns they wear, then this channel is for you. Subscribe, like, and let me know in the comments. Do you think Marie Antoinette was a villain or a victim of her time? Born on November 2, 1755, in the opulent Hofburg Palace of Vienna, Maria Antonia Josefa Johanna of Austria was the 15th child of Holy Roman Empress Maria Theresa and Emperor Francis I. Her early life was filled with music, dancing, and etiquette, but education was not her strength. Tutors often described her as charming but careless, more interested in laughter than Latin. Still, her destiny was never hers to shape. From her earliest years, Antonia was groomed not to rule, but to marry. And in 1770, as part of a fragile political alliance between Austria and France, she was betrothed to Louis Auguste, the awkward, shy grandson of King Louis XIV. At the border of France, she was forced to abandon everything Austrian: her clothes, her language, even her pet dog. In a chilling ceremony known as the dépouilleuse, she was physically stripped of her past and redressed in French finery, symbolically reborn as Marie Antoinette. Her entrance into Versailles was grand, but the French court was cold, cutthroat, and obsessed with protocol. Her youth and foreignness made her an easy target. She was scrutinized relentlessly for her clothing, her accent, even her fertility. The marriage went unconsummated for 7 years, and gossip swirled through the gold-lined halls like poison. And yet, behind the powdered wigs and satin slippers, France was already rumbling beneath her feet. The people were hungry, the treasury was bleeding, and the girl from Austria, she was about to become the symbol of everything they hated. Versailles shimmered like a dream. Marble corridors stretched endlessly beneath gilded ceilings. Silk tapestries whispered as courtiers passed in powdered silence. And at the center of this opulent world stood Marie Antoinette, just 14 when she first arrived, barely older than a child playing dress-up, yet already fitted with the weight of a foreign crown. She didn't speak much French. She hadn't met her husband, the Dauphin Louis Auguste. But she smiled, she bowed, she adapted. Because the French court demanded performance, and Marie, clever, luminous, and eager to be liked, learned the script quickly. The wedding was grand, a spectacle worthy of two empires uniting, and soon she became the Dauphine of France. But the marriage was awkward. Louis, shy and physically withdrawn, seemed uninterested in his bride. Whispers crept through Versailles. The marriage remained unconsummated for years. As the kingdom waited for an heir, Marie waited for affection. Lonely and isolated, she turned to pleasure. Not sin, not yet, but distraction. Lavish gowns, towering hairstyles, masked balls, and endless card games. She danced to forget how out of place she felt. She laughed to hide how young she still was. The French press, hungry for scandal, painted her as frivolous, a foreign puppet drowning in perfume and diamonds. When Louis XV died and Louis XVI took the throne, Marie became Queen of France. She was only 19. The crown was hers, but the kingdom was already cracking. Food shortages, debt, and discontent simmered beyond Versailles' manicured hedges. And inside the palace, she retreated deeper into fantasy. The Petit Trianon, her private estate within Versailles, became her escape. She built a mock village there, where she played at being a shepherdess while real farmers outside starved. She didn't mean cruelty, but ignorance at that level became cruelty. The people began to name her Madame Deficit, the Austrian whore, the foreign queen who danced while France bled. Marie had wanted to be adored. She ended up being hated. And while she sipped champagne and laughed at masked balls, the people whispered in shadows. Not yet a guillotine, but something was stirring. A hunger, a reckoning, a storm. Versailles had made her a queen, but it would not make her safe. The walls of Versailles were golden, but they were also thick. Thick enough to muffle the cries of the hungry, thick enough to block out the sounds of revolution. For Marie Antoinette, those walls became a barrier, protecting her from reality, but also imprisoning her within a world that no longer existed. Inside, life still glittered. Marie held intimate soirees at the Petit Trianon, surrounded by loyal ladies-in-waiting and favored nobles. They drank imported wines, played pastoral games, and whispered gossip beneath moonlit chandeliers. To them, the queen was not a monarch, but a performer, and she performed beautifully. Outside, Paris burned with rumors, bread prices soared, unemployment rose, and pamphlets, vicious, vulgar, and wildly popular, circulated like wildfire. They accused Marie of adultery, incest, and witchcraft. They drew her as a beast, a succubus, a foreign leech draining France dry. Some even portrayed her as malevolent enough to conspire against her own people. It wasn't just propaganda, it was fury. Raw, desperate fury from a people who no longer saw their queen as human. And yet, inside the gilded palace, Marie clung to ritual. The daily toilette, the formal meals, the endless fabrics, jewels, and obligations of court. She dressed not to dazzle, but to distract from the coldness of her husband, from the political unrest, from the isolation of being both idolized and despised. Louis XVI, meanwhile, floundered. Indecisive, detached, and increasingly paranoid, he deferred to advisors who disagreed with each other more than with the people. When the Estates General convened for the first time in nearly 2 centuries, it only poured fuel onto already simmering tensions. Reform was no longer a request, it was a demand. And Marie? She became a symbol of everything wrong with the monarchy. She didn't know how to respond. She wasn't raised to govern, only to represent. Her gestures, charity, minor reforms, even modest fashion, came too little, too late. And when the Bastille fell, when heads were hoisted on pikes, Versailles could no longer shield her. She was no longer a queen in the eyes of the people. She was an intruder, a foreign body in a dying system, and the palace that once protected her began to collapse around her feet. The gilded doors of Versailles did not swing open. They were battered down. On October 5th, 1789, a mob of market women joined by Revolutionary Guards marched from Paris to Versailles. It wasn't merely a protest over bread. It was a reckoning. Cold, starving, and furious, they demanded the king and queen return to Paris, not as rulers, but as prisoners of the people. When they breached the palace, blood was spilled. Guards were slaughtered. The queen's bedchamber was ransacked. Marie barely escaped through a hidden passage, her heart pounding beneath layers of silk. Her children were her only anchor. Her title now meant nothing. Under heavy guard, the royal family was forced to relocate to the Tuileries Palace in the heart of Paris. It was not a palace, but a cage. Every movement watched, every word recorded. The queen who once ruled from marble halls now paced faded tapestries in dim candlelight. For the first time, she saw France, not as a stage, but as a wound. There were moments she tried to fight back. Secret correspondences with foreign monarchs, smuggled letters to Austria, silent pleas for intervention. But every message carried risk, and the walls continued to close in. Her brother, Emperor Joseph II, offered sympathy but little more. Europe watched but hesitated. France, it seemed, would burn alone. In 1791, the royal family attempted to flee. Disguised and desperate, they slipped into the night, hoping to reach the safety of the Austrian border. But their escape failed. A suspicious postmaster recognized the king's face, printed on currency, and the family was intercepted in Varennes. Dragged back to Paris in disgrace, their fate was sealed. The people no longer called her Madame Deficit. They called her traitor. From that point on, Marie Antoinette ceased to be a queen in the public eye. She was stripped of title, authority, and dignity. Her husband, once King of France, was now simply Louis Capet. Revolutionaries rewrote history in real time, and Marie became a symbol not of elegance, but of tyranny. Her prison was now physical. No Petit Trianon, no powder or pearls, just stone walls, iron bars, and the echo of a fading monarchy. And yet, even in captivity, her final act had not yet begun. The morning of October 16, 1793, dawned bitterly cold, but the air in Paris buzzed with a strange electricity. Crowds surged through the streets not to glimpse a queen in glory, but to witness her death. Marie Antoinette, now simply Widow Capet, was pulled from her prison cell at the Conciergerie. Her once golden hair had turned white from stress. She was gaunt, age far beyond her 37 years. Gone were the silks and diamonds. In their place, a plain white chemise. Her wrists were bound tightly behind her back, and unlike her husband, she was not granted the dignity of a covered carriage. She was paraded through the streets in an open cart, exposed to insults, garbage, and glares. The same people who once cheered her opulence now spat on her legacy. Some wept quietly, others shouted for the blade. Her trial had lasted barely 2 days. The charges: depletion of the national treasury, conspiracy against the state, incest. Trumped-up accusations fueled by fear, hatred, and a revolution hungry for blood. When asked for her defense, she barely responded. But when accused of incest with her son, she spoke with fury, not as a queen, but as a mother. Her words silenced the courtroom. "If I have not replied, it is because nature itself refuses to answer such a charge made to a mother." She was found guilty of being a symbol of everything the new republic hated. At the Place de la Révolution, the guillotine towered over the crowd. Marie climbed the scaffold without resistance. According to witnesses, she stepped on her executioner's foot and softly said, "Pardon me, sir, I did not do it on purpose." Those would be her final words. Moments later, the blade fell. The Queen of France, daughter of emperors, mother of kings, was dead. Her severed head was lifted for the crowd to see, and they cheered, hungry for more. But beneath the roar, some watched in silence. Some saw not a villain, but a woman, a mother, a human being swallowed by the chaos of history. The revolution had claimed its most infamous victim. But even in death, Marie Antoinette would not vanish. Her shadow still lingers. Marie Antoinette died a hated symbol of monarchy and privilege. But history rarely leaves judgment untouched. In the centuries since her execution, her story has transformed from a cautionary tale of excess into something far more complex. She became legend. To some, she remains the frivolous queen, the woman who supposedly uttered, "Let them eat cake," while her people starved. But there is no record of her ever saying those words. In fact, the quote appeared in political satire years before she ever arrived in France. It was propaganda, a weapon, and it worked. Others see her as a scapegoat, a young foreign girl placed on a throne she never asked for, made to play the villain in a revolution she didn't start. Her every move was scrutinized. Her Austrian birth made her suspect. Her extravagance made her monstrous. But behind the gowns and diamonds was a woman struggling to survive in a world crumbling beneath her feet. In modern times, Marie Antoinette has been re-examined, not as a queen, but as a woman. A mother torn from her children, a daughter stripped of her name, a human being consumed by the tides of change. Her image has been revived in literature, in film, in art. Sometimes romanticized, sometimes condemned. She's become a mirror reflecting whatever society wants her to be. Villain, victim, fashion icon, feminist, traitor. But perhaps her truest legacy lies in the questions she forces us to ask. What happens when power is given without preparation? When a person becomes a symbol? When a life becomes a scapegoat for a nation's rage? Marie Antoinette's story endures not because she was perfect, but because it reminds us of how fragile legacy truly is. How easily a person can be turned into a myth, and how easily a myth can be used to justify blood. Her head may have fallen, but her story continues to rise. If this story left you speechless, you're not alone. History isn't just about dates and names. It's about power, consequence, and the people who lived through it. For more true stories like this one, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice helps bring these forgotten lives back into the light. Thank you and see you in the next episode of Dark Lore.